What's up, everybody? Welcome to Brandon's Face. It's the podcast about a playlist. I'm Jonathan Beardsley.
And I am Brandon May.
Continuing on with our Album of the Year series for 2023, we will be focusing on R&B this week, a genre that is near and dear to my heart, as you know. It's been, I don't know. I don't know if it's been a good year or a bad year in R&B. I feel like it's just been another year in R&B. It's a genre that has become so closely lumped in with pop music that it's very hard to separate the two. I mean, you and I have this kind of back and forth every year when we're making our lists as to what we consider pop or what we consider R&B and so on and so forth. Do you kind of consider them just one genre now?
I think that there's a lot of classical styles in R&B that aren't as present in pop music. I think a pop artist like I don't even know what I'm saying. Basically, I think that R&B is its own thing, but it can blend together really well. And a pop artist can make an R&B song, whereas an R&B singer can also do pop music. And we're going to talk about that a little bit on this podcast because there's one of them in my top five. I remember asking you during our review, is this pop? Is this R&B? I don't fucking know. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't. But I think that there are quite a bit of distinction, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's exactly it now. It's kind of like I don't know, if an artist like SZA or Kali Uchis releases something, it's most certainly going to have a lot of R&B elements to it, but it's also going to be able to be identified as pop music. But I feel like you and I probably just as a result of the amount of R&B I listen to end up covering a lot of what I would pretentiously call pure R&B stuff like
God,
I don't
you're
know,
such a
Ella
nerd.
Mai, Gallant, Amalou, even like more the trap R&B like I feel like where it is now, I can identify what R&B is now, but I feel like it's so gray at this time. But I do think as a whole, it's in a good place. I think our list should reflect that more or less. But I'm excited to hear yours, man, because not only what you define as R&B interests me, but your taste in R&B is like my taste in metal. You have no idea what I'm going to pick, and I have absolutely no idea where you're going this episode. So, with that said, anything else on the year in R&B before we begin?
No, I'm good, man. Let's get into our lists.
All right, man. It's no surprise what my R&B album of the year is. It's also my overall album of the year, and that is Red Moon and Venus by Kali Uchis. Came out March 3rd of this year. Been at the top of my rotation ever since. I think it's flawless. There's not a bad song on it. I listen to it beginning to end. I don't want to say weekly because there's definitely some weeks I go without listening to it, but it does not go more than a month without being played in full in my house. I love every second of this album. I don't know, man. I'm very excited for her new album, but I have no idea how she's ever going to top this. I think it's flawless. What about you? What is your R&B album of the year?
My R&B album of the year is Raven by Kalila.
And also fantastic pick, man. I feel like that was a heavy front runner, not just in like a pick between you and I, but in a critical pick. Explain why that's your front runner this year.
So when I first heard it, there's a lot of down tempo, and when I was doing prep work for album of the year, I revisited it, obviously, and
Yep.
my only grievance with this album is that it is structured differently than I would structure it. Now that doesn't mean it's structured poorly because the music does do its thing throughout the record. What I love is the liquidity when it comes to the production, the variety when it comes to the production. Kalila's voice is just top notch on this one, and the lyrical content throughout this entire record is it's special, man. It's a little bit over an hour, and
Yeah.
an hour long R&B album is sometimes hard for me to get through. And I will say that I think during when I think the time we by the time we reviewed it, I think both of us had agreed that, well, this one might grow. I think I gave it a 7. I think it's a pretty clear 9, with my only gripe about it being it's structured weirdly. But I think that adds to the artistry after revisiting it so many
Hmm.
times over the last few weeks. It is a gorgeous, sultry, just beautiful record, and I think after revisiting all of the albums on my list, it's the one that I kept coming back to, being like, God, this is good. You know,
I'm screaming "I told you so" in my head right now, right?
I know you are. I know
I
you
was
are.
like, dude, you're gonna love this record. And then when it dropped, you were like, it's okay. And I was like, man, come back to it. I think you're really gonna love it. And sure enough, man, it is your album of the year. I should not take credit for that. Kalila should, because she put out a phenomenal album. We should also say this was probably the release date of the year. This was the day the Paramore album came out, Pierce the Veil album came out, as well as Tennis. That
Right.
was a huge, huge release date. So I feel like, if nothing else, an hour-long album that week, we probably just didn't have the time to give it the attention it deserved. But I'm glad you found the time for it, and I'm glad it connected with you, man. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, man. So, like I've said in previous album of the year episodes that we've done, I have been adding to this list for quite a while, since the beginning of the year. Right.
Hmm.
This had always been on it, and every once in a while, when I was in the mood for R&B and maybe we weren't covering a lot of it that week or something like that, I would go back to it, and mainly I would just hit shuffle. And honestly, man, it's the one that I just kept being like, nah, I need to hear the song after it.
I
And
mean, there's
it
there's so
grabbed me.
many
It
like
grabs you.
there's so many little electronic elements to it production wise that I just knew would resonate with you the more you sat with it. She is a fantastic singer and she has a beautiful voice, but she has no problem letting the music breathe and speak for itself, both of which are things you tend to enjoy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely my R&B album of the year.
Yeah, it clocks in at around an hour, but it doesn't quite go over into that long-winded range, which I think is perfect. And
Right.
her albums are very rare. So enjoy it, man, because we probably won't get one for a while. We didn't cover it this month yet because it dropped in while we're doing all of our album of the year stuff, but she is going to do a remix album for Raven. The first one came out
Awesome.
a few days ago, and it's incredible. Love it.
Love
All
that.
right, let's get into our 2 through 5. I feel like this is where we're going to have a lot of variety. I have at number 2, actually, these are in no specific order, 2 through 5. Amalu, I Came Home Late. I'm a big, big fan of this girl. She put out a couple EPs previous to this, kind of surprise dropped her album, at least to us. We didn't know it was being announced. I'm not sure if it was previously. It's a slow burn, but I'm in love with this album. We got Brent Faiyaz, Larger Than Life. He is redeemed himself with this album. I think it is so different. I It leans into all of the things I like about his music. And I like that he's getting it back on track as far as my taste is concerned, selfishly so. We also got Sneak, the project by Terrace Martin and Gallant. I have admittedly not been listening to this one as much as you probably would imagine, but you are crazy if you think I'm not putting Gallant on my top 5 of the year. And to round out the top 5, the album New Moon. This is just pure trap R&B in the style that I love. It still has a little of their indie grunge elements on a couple of the tracks, but man, everything that they release has just been perfect to me. So that's my 2 through 5. What are yours?
That is so crazy, bro. We only share one of them.
I knew it.
So my 2 through 5 here. I think these are ordered. Amalu, I Came Home Late is my number 2.
Hell yeah.
It's such a good album, bro. It blew me away on release. We talked about how it's pretty close to a perfect R&B record, and it really does sit on the line of R&B and pop. Pretty well, but I think it leans more towards the R&B side. I almost put it on my pop, but I was like, you know what? No, I think it leans more on the R&B. So I did
It's
that.
got a little of that garage in there. It's really
Right,
nice.
right. Yeah, it's a really good record, man. Uh, my number 3 is Since I Have a Lover by Black. I went back to this album a couple of times, and I remember when we reviewed it talking about how just insane this production is on this record, man. It's got
Hmm.
just a handful of very well placed features, and I think he really came into his own on this one. My number three is Caliuchis, Red Moon in Venus. We've talked a lot about this record. It has grown on me quite a bit, and it already started off really, really good. So
Yeah, that's a lock for top five, easy.
for sure, it's a good one. And then my fifth album of the year for R&B is not one album; it is two EPs. It is "Spicy" and "Is It a Crime" by No Guidance. Basically, everything
Yes.
they've released this year is my number five R&B album of the year. They have killed every. There's not a bad song on these EPs, and I am consistently just kind of blown away at how polished their sound is for kind of new kids on the block. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, somewhere in between like New Kids and Boys to Men. It definitely shows that you're a child of a certain era if you gravitate towards that style of R&B. And I love that. You were hitting me up. You were like, "Man, I really wish I could pick No Guidance this week or for this episode because they were amongst your favorite, but they didn't technically put out an album." I would say that those two EPs are as good as any whatever 30 minutes of R&B music this year. They're
Certainly.
great. And I think that they're developing at a crazy rate right now too.
And
That's a
so
great top five.
when you look at we talked about and I love that you brought it up at the beginning at the top of this episode, John, because when you talk about artists who kind of toe the line between pop and R&B, Caliuchis is on there, Amalou is on there, even like even Brent Fayez can
Mhm.
kind of break through that a little bit. No Guidance is just straight up rhythm
Yeah,
and blues.
yeah, that's pure R&B.
And honestly, man, they do it so well, man.
They do. Yeah, that's you look that up in the dictionary and they are the picture right there, man. That is textbook. Hopefully we do get a full-length album from them this year. I don't think that's out of the question.
I'd love one. I hope that they continue to prosper, and I think that they have a little bit blown up. I heard a couple of people bumping their music unprompted at work after a couple of these things had dropped, and it's funny. My ears perked up, and I was like, "Who? I know this. Like, who is this?" And then, and then I go closer to the speaker, and I'm like, "Oh, that's why it's No Guidance." And I fucking love this
Course.
song. Oh
That's
man,
fucking awesome. I have not heard them in the wild yet, but I'm looking forward to that moment. Um,
yeah.
I think most of the ones you said are in my honorable mentions, but I do have a few that we have not touched on so far. What about you?
Honestly, man, these are the only R&B albums that I stayed with and stuck with all year. There is obviously that Brent Fayez album was really good. I think we reviewed it,
Hmm.
pretty positively when it came out. And I think Georgia Smith, right? She,
Yep.
I think Janelle Monáe's album was okay.
Eh.
It ended up being not what I don't think it ended up on the Rolling Stone top 100 of the year or top 50 of the year or whatever. I honestly don't
Yeah, I
think it's
disagree
there,
with
man.
that.
I don't think it's there, man.
I strongly disagree with that actually. I did not enjoy that album quite a bit. I have a few albums that I think deserve mention. You said Black and Kalila. I agree with both of those. We had Kiana Lede released a great album. Mahalia released a phenomenal one. Victoria Monet released one that is getting all sorts of acclaim. Um, I would say kind of my sleeper favorite is maybe that Tinashe one that is somewhere between an album and an EP. I fucking loved that one. But yeah, it was an interesting year. There was a few that we really liked upon release, like the Baby Rose album, that we're maybe not coming back to quite as much, but definitely some great music in there. Any others you want to touch on first?
Yeah, so Georgia Smith, she put out this album this year. I forget what it's called off the top of my head now. I'm not looking at it, but It I wanted it to be more than it was, and it felt like
That's fair.
it just felt like it didn't fit, you know, didn't fit with the vibes of the world right now, in my opinion. But I did like a couple of songs on there that I think like Little Things, right?
Hmm.
Little Things is an obvious banger, right? But Falling or Flying, that's the album. Uh, it just felt a little bloated, and like I said, I really came and with my appreciation of R&B growing, I'm really trying to find what I like, and these albums are really the only ones that I kept coming back to, my man.
That's fair. Yeah, I let's not do a worst of, but I'll touch on a few that just maybe didn't quite live up to my personal expectations in varying degrees of disappointment, I guess. The Janelle Monáe one, which another one I guess we could argue is equally as pop as it is R&B.
Yep.
The Daniel Caesar one, a lot of people love this album. Some I've seen it, some people have it as their album of the year overall. I didn't connect with it in that way. Chloe's debut, her solo debut album, I think was kind of a dud. There's a few good songs on there. Her vocals are obviously impressive, but the actual songwriting just didn't live up to my expectations and didn't live up to my expectations based on the singles that she had released prior, which most of which did not end up on the album. And then lastly, I guess I got to keep it real with some of my favorites. That last Omar Apollo EP, I'm not a big fan of it. I I ended up coming around on Ivory in a way to where that's now one of my favorite albums of the decade. But this EP is just something's a little off on it for me. I think it sounds good on the surface, but when I dig in, it's just not doing it for me.
It just
Any
kind of stays on the surface for you.
Yeah, yeah. And like Tone Stith's project this year, I didn't end up coming back to that one quite as much either. There was a few I was just a little let down by. Any others for you?
You know, I No, I think you really hit the nail on the head. I really did like Mahalia's album this year, and it was in the running
It's a really good one. Yeah.
you know, it was a runner up. I don't think I disliked Omar Apollo's EP as much as you did, but I can see what you're saying. It's not as fully fledged as Ivory was. Masego
Definitely.
had like a couple of good songs on his album.
Yeah. Black Anime, great song.
Yep, yep. I think where R&B really shined this year, though, John, was the singles. We touch
Yes,
on quite a
which
bit of
let's talk
those.
about those.
We have basically our playlist this week was nothing but this. It was just the best singles of R&B of the year, and I've got to say, man, the R&B song of the year is most definitely Doechie's "What It Is." It just
The bot.
yeah, oh, for sure, man. All week I've been walking around singing "What It Is," ho, you know.
That song is fucking phenomenal, dude. Doechii is one. She is definitely on my most anticipated to drop an album next year. I really think the first three tracks on the playlist this year help summarize the best of R&B this year. Moonlight by Kali Uchis, banger. What It Is by Doechii, banger. And Water by Tyla. There's a song every year that kind of just comes across. She's been a solo artist for a little bit, but this is kind of her like big solo debut track, and it really took off, man, in ways that most R&B songs don't. Last year it was Hours and Hours by Money Long that kind of became this song. This is it this year. She dropped an EP we haven't had a chance to talk about, but she is dropping a full-length album early next year. We'll be sure to cover that.
Hey, that's awesome.
Um, what did you think of actually hearing the original version of it this week instead of just the Travis Scott version that we covered?
It's way better.
Yes, right? Okay. I was going to say Travis forcing his way into it is not for the best on that one. A few of my other favorites: Good Good by Usher, Summer Walker, and 21 Savage, Smoke by Victoria Monet and Lucky Day, and Needs by Tinashe are all among my top played this year. What about you? What are some of your favorite singles?
Yeah, so obviously that Doechii "What It Is."
Yep.
How Does It Feel by Chloe. As much as I fucking hate Chris Brown,
Best song on the album.
the track's really good.
It is. It is.
Good Good by Usher. Obviously, the government mandated 21 Savage feature, and and yeah, that was really good. Let's see here. Be My Summer by Snow Allegra. I think you know I've got a soft spot for Snow.
Yep,
You
same.
know, and yeah, I think honestly, man, I think that's really it for me here. The Usher remix of that Mooney Long song is pretty good. The Lucky Day put out a single this year, didn't he? Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, that's you. I was just gonna say we kind of had a late sleeper. Whenever that song comes on, I am blown the fuck away by how good it is,
I
dude.
know, I know. And then we got a couple of singles from Twee this year also, which
Hmm.
were pretty good. They were pretty good. Look, man, I think R&B is kind of stuck in this rut that most big genres kind of get into after it's been kind of stagnant for a while. We've got the big artists that kind of just dominate forever, right? Like Usher
Hmm.
is still, if you ask any R&B head their favorite artist, it'll be Usher. you know, um, and
Wow, way to call me out, Brandon.
I'm sorry, but it's the truth, right?
Yes, it
What do
is.
you think R&B needs to push it past Usher? Usher is obviously a pinnacle and has many releases under his belt that are certified fucking classics, and they were classics at like the day they dropped. What do you think R&B needs in order to kind of push itself into the future with something new? I think SZA almost did it last year with SOS.
Oh, she might win 9 Grammys this year. She might have definitely done it. What does it need to push it? That's a great question. Um, I mean, it needs new blood that the younger generation likes, like anything needs to really survive. And I
Right.
think that R&B is such a genre rooted in nostalgia and the past, and sometimes the so far back past that it doesn't connect with younger generations until they get to a certain age, if at all. I would say as a Gallant probably is my favorite artist, but keeping it real, I don't think he is necessarily going to push the genre forward in terms of like a popularity aspect. Like he is not that person that's going to be in the spotlight and want to lead that change. We keep having these breakout stars like Tyla and Money Long, but I think it needs to keep evolving. The last big wave we had post Weekend and Frank was the mid 2010s trap soul thing with Brent Faiyaz,
Mm-hmm.
Bryson Tiller, Black, all kind of leading the way with great debut albums, followed by varying degrees of success, but they created a sound, all of them ran with it, and it became a thing. We just need that. But it seems like the sound that's breaking through on songs like Water by Tyler or Hours and Hours is a sound that's been around for 30 years. So it's like people like this music. I just don't think it's easily as accessible or like being shown to them, but it is connecting when they do hear it. So what I think it needs to survive is really other than New Blood is to just get out there. Like radio is a dead format for the most part. So these people need to find other ways to get people to hear their music, whether it's playlist placement, sadly, or promoting their music through different ways so people can see it or hear it on commercials or ads or whatever it is. They just need to think outside the box because there's a lot of great music in R&B, and I don't think enough people are listening to it. And I think at least a fraction of the people not listening to it would be fans of it if they got to. But how we get to that point, I have no fucking idea, man. I have no clue.
Well, I think it's partly record label, the record label's faults. They
As always. Yeah.
as always, as is tradition for sure. You've got all of these great artists that are signed to these giant record labels who, with R&B not being as popular as say rap has been in the last decade, they haven't really been pushing the R&B. It's just been kind of existing. I think and we'll get into this on the next episode. But with rap declining a little bit, I think that there's going to be a void, and I think the void can be filled with creativity, diversity, and maybe some new sounds injected into it. One of the reasons why
Definitely.
Khalila's album Raven was my favorite this year was just how much diversity she has in the production end of things and how little she kept herself in a box. that alone, I think, is gonna push. Is gonna, if artists stop keeping themselves in boxes, they're going to make the music that they want to make and not the music that they think is palatable. And I think that that is probably the future of most genres, right? And you've got the catchy pop stuff like Dochi's What It Is, because let's be real, it's a pop song,
It
but
is,
it's also
yes.
R&B, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
You're very right.
I think that artists like No Guidance are going to see some love. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to see love from old heads, and old heads may or may not spend money on music. But I think the reality is that they might not get to the top, and if they do, I'd love that. But I think a mix of classic soulful R&B with hints of other genres blended in, I think is going to really push something to the future. And I would love to see I'd love to see some rock. I'd love to see some guitars, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I loved Lou's album this year, is because, you know, she very purposefully, I think, included fret slides
Yeah.
on her record on a number of different places, and stuff like that makes.
Her does that as
Yep,
well.
absolutely. Yep, she does. And that's one of the reasons why I loved that her album, I think, in 2021.
Mhm.
And it's the artists that are keeping their identity while also pushing boundaries that I think are that I think personally are just fucking killing it right now.
And they don't need help, as was the case, I think, previously, at least in terms of streams. What it is a great example of this. That song came out last year with a Kodak Black feature on it. And for some reason, they ended up releasing a solo version without him, and it has gone through the roof. If you look at the difference in streams, the version with Kodak Black now has 80 million streams. The version without him has 238 million streams. Now, I think that's great. I think that makes perfect sense if you've listened to both versions, but that is not normal for like a big name artist like that to have less streams on their version when that's the original version. It's showing that people are kind of over it and they just want to hear whoever these artists are be themselves. We don't need these distraction verses, really.
That's so funny. Hey, free Kodak number one. Number two, yeah, I think that's hilarious, man. I actually think that's hilarious, and it goes to show that we'll save it for the next episode. But rap is in a really weird place right now.
Yes,
R and B and rap have always kind of been intertwined, right? Like Usher did,
yes.
yeah, with Ludacris. You know, like
Yeah, exactly.
rap and R and B have always been intertwined, and I think that R&B has a little pocket they can get into next year, and I think if we see, I don't know, like a Lucky Day release, maybe some new music from Frank Ocean. The Weeknd's never going to put another R&B album out, but if we see something from a big artist, and like maybe it features someone like No Guidance or Black or something along those lines that's going to kind of push people to listen to other things. I think it might do something, you know?
If Frank Ocean releases a track featuring No Guidance this year, Brandon, I will jump out of a plane without a parachute. I would love to see it. I
No,
don't
he
know if
never
that's gonna
would.
happen.
He never would.
He might release new music this year. I don't think that's out of the question. There's been some videos coming out lately.
Yeah, I think he needs to, but
Maybe
that's
that
a
was the answer to your question earlier. That's what R&B needs is Frank Ocean at this point. Like you said, the weekend's gone. He's not coming back to R&B. Frank Ocean is all that's left that people consider R&B and that people will not abandon.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not mad at the weekend for doing his thing. I don't think I ever have been. I think we all love his R&B side. I think we all love his pop side, and you know, I just don't think he's ever coming back to R&B as a medium.
I mean, I would like that, but I feel like if he did, it would be a very Drake-ish situation. Like, oh, For All the Dogs sounds like all my old stuff. No, not really. Not really. Before we move on, though, let's talk about our most anticipated last year because you said it, everybody's favorite R&B artist of all time, Usher, is releasing a new album next year. It's coming out, I think, in like a midweek section around that Super Bowl performance that he's doing. February 11th is the date, if I'm not mistaken. You know that's my most anticipated. On the calendar or not, who do you want or hope releases an album in R&B next year?
Snow Allegra, Ella
Yep,
May.
she is number 2 on my list.
Ella
That would be
May
great.
would be fucking tight.
Yep.
No guidance, like we've been talking about
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again. I think that those are the ones that I'm like. I could do a twee album for sure.
I could always do a twee
I
album.
think we all could. Yeah, man. Those are the ones that I'm excited for. Lucky Day, Lucky Day. I
Uh,
think I ended up coming around to Candy Drip. I remember roasting that album when I first listened to it, and I came around to it. It's a very, very good record. Dude is incredibly talented, and I would love to see another record of his where I can appreciate it up front. You know.
I am most definitely with you. We are becoming the same person. The top 3 on my most anticipated are Usher, Snow Allegra, and Lucky Day, but I do have some others as well. Erica DeCassier, a girl that we've covered some songs of, but I don't think we've covered an album of yet. I really hope she releases a follow-up next year to her last album. I just found out that she wrote like 3 of the songs on the New Jeans EP, which
Oh, nice.
crazy, crazy thing of worlds colliding. Good for her. Genevieve, an artist we covered an EP of, big fan of hers. Hope she releases a new project this year. And we just need to talk about the Normani update. Still no debut EP. We are going on, I think, 5 years of being a solo artist and talking about this debut album. Still no debut album. Let's see. Last song released by Normani. We're going to do a yearly Normani update for all of you since at this point we need to. Last song she released was Fair, other than a Calvin Harris feature, and that was in 2022. Last song before that was with Cardi B in 2021. And last song before that was Motivation in 2019, which was I think was like her solo debut. So we have 3 songs in like 4 years. We are going to need to bump those numbers up next year, Normani. Come on. This is ridiculous.
It's funny.
Any other most anticipated?
That's it for me, man.
All right, that does it for us this week. Join us next week when we will be talking about the best rap music of the year and some of the not so best rap music of the year, which sadly there's too much of in 2023. If you like the show, like, follow, and subscribe. You can find us on Instagram and Reddit. Just search Brandon's Face Pod and follow the playlist that the podcast is based on. You can find the link to that in the show notes. These weeks, while we're doing album of the year, we are putting a bunch of our favorite songs from the year on each week. They are kind of really fun end of year best of playlists, if nothing else. So follow for that. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.